Sometimes the loudest people in the room are the ones who have never been tested. The laughter came first, sharp, careless, cutting through the soft hum of the cafe like it didn't belong there, like it had no reason to lower itself for anyone. Marcus Reed didn't look up, not when the first comment landed, not when the second one followed. Louder this time, meant to be heard, meant to draw attention. He just sat there across from his daughter, adjusting the edge of a napkin that had slipped halfway off her lap. His fingers steady, precise, like the world around him had already been filtered out. The cafe smelled like roasted beans and warm sugar, polished wood tables catching the afternoon light. A quiet kind of place, the kind where conversations stayed low and people minded their own business. Until now, one of the men leaned back in his chair, stretching his arm across the backrest like he owned the space. His voice carried without effort. Didn't know this place started lowering standards. A few heads turned, not fully, just enough to register the shift. A couple of people glanced at Marcus, then quickly away, the way people do when they don't want to get involved. His daughter looked up at him, small hand hovering over her plate, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daddy, are they talking about us?" Marcus reached for her fork, repositioned it gently in her hand. "Eat your pancakes before they get cold." His tone calm, even, no edge, no reaction, like the question hadn't changed anything, like the room hadn't shifted around them. The man laughed again, this time louder, encouraged by the silence beside him. Another voice joined in, something about appearances, something about not belonging. The words blurred together, but the tone stayed the same, dismissive, easy, like they'd already decided who he was. Marcus poured a little more syrup onto his daughter's plate, careful not to spill a drop. The golden lines settled into the edges of the pancakes. Slow, controlled. His daughter watched him for a second longer, then nodded and went back to eating. The tension didn't leave. It just moved, settled into the corners of the room, into the space between tables, into the pauses between breaths. A woman near the window lowered her coffee cup halfway, her eyes flicking toward the scene, then back down. A man in a suit pretended to scroll his phone, his thumb not moving at all. Marcus remained still, shoulders relaxed, posture neutral, not slouched, not defensive, just present, like he was exactly where he intended to be. The laughter didn't stop. It grew a little louder, a little more pointed. One of the men shifted in his seat, the legs of the chair scraping softly against the floor, the sound stretching just long enough to draw attention again. Marcus finally looked up, not at the men, not at the room, just a brief glance across the space, measuring something unseen, then back to his daughter, his expression unchanged. But something in the air tightened, something subtle, something most people missed, except one person across the room who hadn't looked away. And for the first time, she realized the man they were laughing at hadn't ignored them because he was weak. He had ignored them because he hadn't decided they were worth responding to yet. The chair legs scraped again, this time louder, intentional, the sound cutting across the room like a signal. And it worked. More people turned now, not fully committing, but enough to feel it. The shift from background noise to something unfolding. Marcus Reed did not move. His hand rested lightly against the edge of the table, fingers still. His daughter kept eating, slower now, her small movements careful, like she could feel the attention even if she did not understand it. One of the men stood up, stretching his shoulders, rolling his neck like he was warming up for something that did not belong in a place like this. He took a step forward, then another, his shoes heavy against the hardwood floor, each step deliberate, each step meant to be noticed. Marcus's eyes lifted slightly, not toward the man, but just enough to register motion, then back down to the table. The distance between them closed to a few feet. The man stopped there, lingering, waiting for a reaction that did not come. "You just going to sit there like you do not hear me?" His voice carried again, louder this time, drawing a few uncomfortable glances from the counter. The barista paused mid-pour, milk hissing too long before she caught herself. Marcus reached for his coffee cup, lifted it halfway, then set it back down untouched, like he had changed his mind before the motion finished. His daughter looked at the man, then back at Marcus, uncertainty in her eyes. "Daddy," she said softly. He placed his hand over hers just for a second. A brief contact, steady, grounding, then let go. "It is okay," he said, quiet enough that only she could hear. Across the room, Claire Whitmore had not moved since she first noticed him. Her posture remained composed, legs crossed, one hand resting against the side of her cup. But her attention had narrowed completely. The room had faded out. The conversations, the background noise, the soft music, all of it distant now. What remained was the space between Marcus and the man in front of him. And something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous. Not yet. But misaligned. Like two completely different realities occupying the same place. The man leaned forward slightly, placing one hand on the back of an empty chair beside Marcus's table. Casual on the surface, but too close. Too familiar. People like you always think if you stay quiet long enough the world just passes you by, he said with a small laugh. The kind meant for his friends behind him, who answered with low chuckles. Marcus finally looked up fully this time. Not at the face. Not at the expression. Just a calm, direct look that landed without force. Without emotion. And stayed there for a second too long. The man's smile faltered just slightly. Almost invisible. But Claire saw it. The smallest shift. Like something underneath the surface had just been touched. Marcus blinked once. Slow. Controlled. Then looked back down. His attention returning to his daughter like the moment had already passed. Like it had not been worth holding on to. The man straightened up again, adjusting his stance. Something in his posture tightening. Like he was trying to reclaim ground he had not realized he had lost. The room held its breath. Not consciously. Not all at once. But piece by piece, the noise dropped. Conversations lowered. The tension spreading quiet and thick. Marcus reached for a napkin again, folding it once, aligning the edges perfectly before placing it beside his daughter's plate. And for the first time, the silence did not feel empty. It felt heavy, like something was about to happen. And only one person in that room knew exactly when it would begin. The door opened with a soft chime that did not belong to the tension already settled inside the cafe. And for a brief second, the room shifted again. Not away from the moment, but stretched by something new. Claire Whitmore stepped in without hesitation, her heels precise against the floor. Each step measured. Not rushed. Not slow. Just exact. The kind of movement that did not ask for space, but received it anyway. A red dress followed the line of her body. Clean. Structured. The fabric catching light as she moved, then settling again like it knew where it belonged. Conversations lowered instinctively. Not because she demanded it, but because presence like that did not need permission. She paused near the entrance just long enough to take in the room, her eyes moving once across the tables, the counter, the windows, then stopping. Not on the men who had been loud, not on the people pretending not to watch, but on Marcus Reed, sitting exactly where he had been, as if nothing had changed. His daughter looked up first, noticing the color before the presence. Children always noticed movement before meaning. Claire walked forward, passing between tables, the air shifting slightly as people adjusted without thinking. She reached the counter, ordered something simple, her voice low, controlled, then turned again, this time choosing a table not far from Marcus, but not too close. The distance intentional, close enough to observe, far enough to remain separate. She sat down, crossing one leg over the other, the red fabric moving subtly, then resting against her knee. Her hand brushed the edge of the table, fingers still, her posture relaxed, but not casual. Her eyes returned to Marcus, not openly, not in a way that would be obvious, but enough to track him, to measure something that did not align. The man, near Marcus, noticed her too. Of course he did. His posture changed slightly, shoulders pulling back, chin lifting a fraction, the performance adjusting to a new audience. See that, he said louder than necessary, glancing toward his friends, but making sure the line traveled further. That is what this place is supposed to look like. A few laughs followed. Lighter now, less confident, but still there. Marcus did not respond. He reached for a glass of water instead, sliding it gently closer to his daughter. Slow down, he said quietly. You have time. His voice steady, like the room had not shifted again. Claire watched that. The way he spoke. Not defensive, not distant, just present. Like everything outside that table existed on a different level. She leaned back slightly, the chair giving a soft sound against the floor. The movement small, but deliberate. The fabric of her dress adjusting along her shoulder, then settling again. Her gaze moved from Marcus to the man standing near him and back again. Something did not match. Not the clothing, not the situation. Something deeper. The man stepped closer once more, just enough to close the remaining distance between himself and Marcus's table. his hand brushing lightly against the edge of it. Not enough to knock anything over, but enough to test the boundary. Marcus's daughter paused, her fork midair, eyes shifting between the two men. Marcus noticed that first. Not the hand, not the movement, but her hesitation. He reached forward, adjusting the plate slightly, turning it back toward her. "Keep going," he said, and she did. Slowly, carefully. Claire's fingers tightened just slightly against the edge of her cup. Not enough to be seen by anyone else, but enough for her to feel it, because something inside her had already shifted. Not fear, not concern, something closer to recognition. And across the room, Marcus Reed finally looked up again. Not at the face, not at the voice, but at the space between them. And for the first time, Claire realized he had been aware of everything from the very beginning, and had simply been waiting for the moment to matter. The man's hand stayed on the edge of the table longer than it needed to, not pressing, not moving, just there, like a quiet challenge. Marcus Reed did not look at it. Not immediately. His attention remained on his daughter, who had slowed again, her fork resting against the plate, her eyes no longer on the food, but on the space between them. Marcus reached forward and adjusted the glass of water again, turning it slightly so it would not tip. The movement small, controlled, like everything else about him. "Take a sip," he said softly. She obeyed without question, lifting the glass with both hands. The room felt tighter now, like the air had been pulled inward. Conversations had nearly stopped, not fully gone, but reduced to whispers that did not carry. The man shifted his weight again, impatience starting to show in the set of his shoulders, in the way his fingers tapped once against the wood. "You think ignoring me makes you better?" he said. Not loud enough to shout, but loud enough to cut through what remained of the quiet. Behind him, one of his friends laughed, but it sounded thinner now, uncertain. Claire Whitmore watched from her seat, her body still angled slightly back, but her attention fully forward, her fingers resting against the rim of her cup. No movement except for the subtle tightening at her knuckles. The red fabric along her shoulder shifted as she leaned forward just a fraction. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to close the distance in her own view. She was not watching the man anymore. Not really. She was watching Marcus. The way his breathing did not change. The way his posture remained exactly the same, as if the moment had not escalated at all. And that was what unsettled her, because moments like this always escalated. People raised voices, stepped back, created space, reacted, but he did none of that. The man's hand moved then, sliding across the table just enough to brush against the corner of the plate. A light contact, barely there, but deliberate. The plate shifted half an inch. The sound soft, but sharp in the silence. Marcus's daughter froze again, her grip tightening around the glass, her eyes flicking up quickly. Marcus saw that before anything else. Before the hand, before the movement, before the man. He saw her hesitation, and something in his expression changed. Not visibly, not in a way most people would notice. But Claire did. It was not anger. It was not tension. It was focus, distilled down to something precise. Marcus reached out and steadied the plate, returning it to its place. The motion calm, unhurried. Then he lifted his gaze fully this time, not stopping at the table, not passing over the hand, but settling directly into the space in front of him where the man stood. The eye contact landed without force, without emotion, and stayed there longer than before. Long enough that the man shifted again just slightly. Long enough that the room seemed to hold itself in place. Claire felt it in her chest. A quiet pressure, like something inevitable had just been acknowledged. She adjusted her posture without realizing it, her leg uncrossing, then crossing again, the fabric of her dress following the motion smoothly. Her breathing slower now, more controlled, but her attention sharper than before, because for the first time, she was not observing a situation. She was watching a decision form. And Marcus Reed, who had not spoken, who had not reacted, who had not moved, now looked like someone who had just decided something. And whatever came next was no longer about the words that had been said. It was about the line that had just been crossed. The silence did not break. It deepened, stretching across the cafe like something invisible had settled over every table, every chair, every breath. Marcus Reed did not rush. He did not react the way people expected when a line had been crossed. Instead, he moved slower than before, his hand reaching for the napkin again, folding it once more even though it was already aligned. His daughter watched him closely now, no longer eating, no longer moving, just watching. the way children do when they sense something they cannot name. The man in front of him exhaled sharply, a short laugh that did not carry the same confidence as before. "What is this supposed to be?" he said, gesturing loosely toward Marcus. "Some kind of act?" His voice pushed outward like he was trying to pull the room back under his control. Behind him, one of his friends shifted in his seat, the sound of the chair legs dragging slightly against the floor. Too loud in the quiet. Claire Whitmore felt that too. The imbalance. The way the energy in the room no longer followed the man who had been speaking, but had settled somewhere else. Somewhere quieter, more contained. She leaned forward another inch. The movement subtle, but intentional. The red fabric along her shoulder catching the light before settling again. Her eyes locked on Marcus, not blinking, not looking away, because something in his stillness had become louder than anything that had been said. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low, even, almost soft. "Finish your meal," he said. But he was not speaking to the man. He was speaking to his daughter. She hesitated for half a second, then picked up her fork again, her hands still slightly tense, but moving. Marcus waited until she took one bite, then another. Only then did he shift his gaze back forward. The man stepped closer this time, not stopping at the edge of the table, but moving just past it, entering the space that had not been his to take. His hand lifted slightly, like he was about to emphasize a point, or maybe test the boundary again. But he stopped halfway. Something in Marcus's posture had changed. Not dramatically, not enough for most people to see, but enough that the man paused, his arm hovering uncertain. For the first time, Claire caught that too. The hesitation, the break in rhythm, the moment where confidence did not translate into action. Marcus rose from his seat then. Not quickly, not suddenly, just a smooth, controlled motion. The chair beneath him moved back a few inches. The sound quiet, but final. His height changed the frame of the moment, shifted the distance between him and the man. No longer casual, measured. His daughter looked up at him, eyes wide, but he did not look down at her again. His focus stayed forward. The man straightened instinctively, shoulders pulling back as if responding to something unspoken. "There it is," he said, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. Finally decided to stand up. Marcus did not answer. He simply adjusted his sleeve once. A small, precise motion, like he was preparing for something routine, something expected. Claire felt her breath slow without meaning to, her fingers tightening slightly around her cup, because the room had changed again. Completely this time. The laughter was gone. The noise was gone. Even the tension had shifted into something sharper, more defined, like a line had been drawn. And everyone in that cafe knew they were about to see what happened when someone stepped across it. And Marcus Reed, who had not reacted, who had not engaged, who had not even acknowledged the noise, now stood there calm, silent, and completely in control of what came next. The moment did not explode. It tightened. Marcus Reed stood still for half a second longer. And in that half second, something invisible settled into place. The kind of stillness that does not come from hesitation, but from certainty. His eyes did not move from the space in front of him, not locked onto the man's face, not reacting to his voice, just fixed on the distance between them, like that was the only thing that mattered. The man shifted again, his confidence now uneven, like he was adjusting to a situation that no longer followed his lead. "What now?" he said, his tone sharper than before, pushing for a reaction that still did not come. Marcus moved then, not fast, not dramatic, just one step forward, controlled, precise. His hand lifted slightly, not in threat, not in aggression, but in placement, guiding the man's arm away from the table with a motion so clean it looked almost casual, like someone correcting a small mistake. The man blinked, caught off guard, not by force, but by the speed, by the certainty. His balance shifted a fraction, his foot adjusting instinctively to stay grounded. Marcus did not follow through. He did not escalate. He simply completed the movement, then stepped back into position like the correction had already been made. The chair behind the man scraped loudly as he stumbled into it. Not falling, not collapsing, just losing that invisible line he thought he controlled. The room reacted in fragments. A breath held, a cup set down too quickly. A quiet gasp that never fully formed into sound. Claire Whitmore felt it hit her chest. Not fear, not shock, something sharper, something like realization. Her fingers tightened around the ceramic of her cup, the warmth pressing into her skin, grounding her as her eyes stayed fixed on Marcus. Because he had not changed his expression. He had not raised his voice. He had not even taken a full step forward. He had simply moved once. And the entire balance of the room had shifted. The man straightened immediately, adjusting his jacket, his posture trying to recover what had just slipped through his hands. His eyes flicked around the room, noticing for the first time that the attention was no longer behind him. It was on him, measuring him, questioning him. "Watch it," he said. But the words lacked weight now, lacking the certainty they had carried moments ago. Marcus did not respond. He turned slightly, not away, not retreating, just enough to place himself between the man and his daughter without making it obvious, without drawing attention to the motion. Claire saw that too. The placement, the intention hidden inside something that looked simple. Her breathing slowed further, her focus narrowing, because what she was watching was not a reaction. It was control, the kind of control that did not need to prove itself twice. Marcus reached down and adjusted the edge of the table again, aligning it with the chair. His daughter's plate untouched now, sitting exactly where it had been before the interruption, like nothing had ever disturbed it. "Finish eating," he said quietly, his voice unchanged. His daughter nodded quickly, picking up her fork again, even though her hands still held a trace of tension. The man hesitated, standing there for a second longer than he should have, the room no longer supporting him, no longer echoing his energy. His friends stayed seated now, their laughter gone, replaced by something quieter, something uncertain. And Marcus Reed, who had said almost nothing, who had done almost nothing, now stood in the center of that silence like he had always belonged there, like the moment had never been about him proving anything, but about everyone else, realizing they had been wrong from the very beginning. No one spoke after that, not immediately, the kind of silence that does not come from confusion, but from recognition. Something had just shifted, and everyone felt it, even if they could not explain it. Marcus Reed sat back down as if nothing had happened, the chair moving quietly beneath him, his hand reaching for the edge of the table once more, aligning it with a small adjustment that brought everything back into place. His daughter watched him for a second longer, then slowly returned to her food, the tension still in her shoulders, but fading with each small movement. Marcus picked up his coffee this time, taking a slow sip, like the moment had already passed, like it had not mattered enough to stay. The man in front of him did not move at first, his posture caught between stepping forward and stepping back, his eyes flicking briefly toward his friends, who did not offer anything now. No laughter, no encouragement, just quiet observation, the kind that made the space feel even heavier. "Whatever, man," he muttered finally, the words forced, more for himself than anyone else. He stepped back one pace, then another, reclaiming distance like it had been his choice all along. His chair scraped loudly as he pulled it out, sitting down harder than necessary. His friends shifted uncomfortably, one of them reaching for his drink without looking up, another pretending to check his phone. The energy that had filled their table minutes ago was gone, replaced by something smaller, contained. Claire Whitmore did not look away, her posture unchanged, but her attention sharpened in a different way now, no longer tracking a situation, but studying a person, the way Marcus had handled it. Not the movement, not the speed, but everything around it. The restraint, the timing, the decision to end it without escalating further. Her fingers relaxed slightly around her cup as she exhaled a breath she had not realized she was holding. The fabric of her dress settled along her shoulder as she leaned back again, but her gaze remained fixed. Marcus did not acknowledge the room. He did not look at the man again. He simply focused on his daughter. "Finish up. We have to go in a few minutes," he said, his voice calm, steady. She nodded quickly, taking another bite, this time faster, like she wanted to match his rhythm. The barista behind the counter moved again finally, resuming her work, the sound of milk steaming returning softly, like the cafe was trying to remember what it had been before. A couple at the far table began speaking again, their voices low, hesitant, as if testing whether it was safe. Marcus reached into his pocket, placing a few bills neatly on the table, enough to cover the meal plus more. His movements deliberate, no rush, no hesitation. Claire noticed that too, the way he prepared to leave, not like someone escaping a situation, but like someone who had already decided when it would end. He stood again, this time without tension, without focus shifting, his jacket slightly into place. His daughter slid off her chair, standing beside him, reaching for his hand. He took it without looking down, his grip firm, but gentle, And for a brief second, as he turned to leave, his eyes moved across the room. Not searching, not reacting, just a single pass that stopped for the shortest moment on Claire. She held his gaze without flinching. Something unreadable in her expression. Something new. Then he looked away and walked toward the door like the entire moment had already been closed behind him. And as the door opened, letting in a brief wash of cool air, Claire remained seated, her fingers still resting against her cup, her thoughts no longer on the room, no longer on the men, but on one question that would not settle. Because for the first time in a long time, she had not been the one in control of what she felt. And she did not know why. The door closed behind Marcus Reed with a soft click that seemed louder than it should have been. And for a moment, no one inside the cafe moved. Like the sound had marked the end of something they had not been prepared to witness. Claire Whitmore remained seated, her hand still resting against the side of her cup, the warmth long gone. But she did not notice. Her eyes stayed fixed on the space where he had been standing seconds ago, as if the air itself still held his presence. The room slowly began to breathe again. Not all at once, but in fragments. A chair shifted somewhere near the back. A quiet cough broke the stillness. The low hum of the espresso machine returned. But it did not sound the same. It sounded cautious. The men at the table across from where Marcus had been avoided looking at each other. One of them reached for his drink, but stopped halfway, his hand hovering like he had forgotten what he meant to do. Another cleared his throat, adjusting his posture as if trying to reset something that would not return. Claire finally moved then, her fingers lifting slightly from the cup, then settling again against the table. She leaned forward just a fraction, her gaze lowering to the bills Marcus had left behind. Neatly placed, aligned with the edge of the table. Not careless, not rushed, intentional. She studied them for a second longer than necessary, then looked toward the counter. The barista was moving again, slower than before, glancing once toward the door as if expecting it to open again. Claire stood then, the movement smooth, controlled. But there was a difference now, a subtle hesitation in the way she shifted her weight before stepping forward. The red fabric of her dress followed her motion, catching the light, then settling as she approached the counter. Who was he, she asked, her voice quiet, not demanding, just direct. The barista blinked once, caught off guard by the question, her eyes flicking briefly toward the door, then back to Claire. I do not know, she said honestly. He comes in sometimes. Not often. Always with his daughter. Keeps to himself. Claire's gaze did not waver. What does he do? The barista shook her head slightly. I never asked. She hesitated, then added. But he notices things. Small things. Like when something is out of place or when someone needs help before they say it. Claire absorbed that without reacting. Her expression unchanged. But something behind her eyes shifted. The smallest fracture in the control she carried so easily. She turned back toward the room, scanning once more. Not for the men, not for the people who had watched, but for anything that might explain what she had just seen. And found nothing. The space where Marcus had been was just a table again. Empty. Ordinary. As if the moment had never happened. Except it had. And it had changed something she could not name. She walked back to her seat slowly, her heels softer now against the floor, as if she was moving through something heavier than before. She sat down again, but did not reach for her cup this time, her hands resting loosely in her lap, her posture no longer as rigid as it had been when she first arrived. Outside, through the large glass window, she could see the street beyond. Cars passing, people walking, life continuing without interruption. And somewhere out there, Marcus Reed was walking away like nothing had happened, like the moment had not mattered. Claire's eyes followed the reflection in the glass, not seeing him, but searching for the imprint of what he had left behind. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something unfamiliar. Not weakness, not confusion, something quieter, deeper, a question that did not have an immediate answer. And the more she tried to dismiss it, the more it stayed. Because she knew one thing with certainty. She had not just witnessed control, she had witnessed restraint. And that was far more dangerous. The cafe did not return to normal. It only pretended to. Conversations resumed. But softer. Laughter came back. But shorter. Like everyone was careful not to reach too far. Claire Whitmore sat in that quiet adjustment. Her posture composed again. But not the same. The control was still there. But something underneath it had shifted. Something she could not file away as easily as everything else she dealt with every day. She reached for her cup finally, lifting it to her lips. But she did not drink. She paused halfway, her reflection faint in the surface of the coffee, her eyes studying something that was no longer in the room. She lowered the cup slowly, placing it back down with care, her fingers lingering on the rim, as if grounding herself in something familiar. The men who had filled the space with noise earlier were quieter now. One of them leaned forward, speaking under his breath, the others nodding, but not looking toward the door, not looking toward the table where Marcus had been. They stayed contained, their presence reduced. Claire watched them for a moment, then looked away, dismissing them completely. They no longer mattered. Not after what she had seen. She stood again, this time with purpose. The movement smooth, deliberate, the red fabric of her dress settling along her frame as she turned toward the exit. Her heels moved with quiet precision across the floor, each step measured, but not hesitant. When she reached the door, she paused, her hand resting lightly against the handle. She glanced once over her shoulder, not at the room, not at the people, but at the space where everything had shifted. And for a brief second, her expression softened. Not weakness, not uncertainty, something closer to recognition. Then she pushed the door open, stepping out into the late afternoon air. The temperature cooler, the light sharper, the sounds of the street immediate and real. Cars passing, tires against pavement, a distant horn, someone laughing somewhere down the block. Life continuing without pause. She stood there for a moment, letting it settle around her, her eyes scanning the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the line of parked cars, searching, not urgently, not visibly, but with intention. She spotted him then, across the street, walking at a steady pace, his daughter beside him, her small hand in his stride unbroken, not rushed, not slowed, like he had already left the moment behind, like it had never attached itself to him. Claire did not call out. She did not move immediately. She watched the distance between them, measured in feet, in seconds, in choice. Marcus paused at the corner briefly, waiting for the light to change. His daughter looked up at him, saying something. He leaned down slightly, just enough to hear her answer, then straightened again. The signal shifted, the walk sign blinking on. They stepped forward together, crossing the street without hesitation, without looking back. Claire felt something tighten in her chest. Not discomfort, not confusion, something sharper, something that did not belong to her usual world. She stepped off the curb then, stopping herself just before committing to the movement, her hand lowering slowly to her side, because she realized something in that exact moment. If she followed him now, if she closed that distance, she would be stepping into something she did not control, something she did not understand. And for the first time in a long time, that realization did not push her away. It pulled her in. Marcus reached the other side of the street, continuing forward, disappearing into the flow of people until he was no longer distinct, no longer separate, just another figure moving through the city. Claire remained where she was, the light changing again, the traffic resuming around her, her gaze fixed on the space where he had vanished. And the question settled deeper now, no longer surface level, no longer easy to ignore, because she had built her life on knowing, on control, on always being the one who understood the situation before anyone else. And now there was one person she could not read, one moment she could not predict, one presence that had shifted something inside her without asking. And as she turned slowly, stepping back onto the sidewalk, the thought stayed with her. Clear, steady, unavoidable. She did not know who Marcus Reed was, but she knew one thing with certainty. This was not the last time their paths would cross.